dear students, welcome to the lecture series of Advanced Java. I am Shruti Yagnik and today we will be studying how to retrieve a data from a database. Now in this video lecture we are going to study about a new interface, that is the ResultSet interface, which is going to help you to retrieve all the data from the database. Apart from the ResultSet interface, you are also going to study two other interfaces, that is ResultSetMetaData and DatabaseMetaData. So without wasting any time, let us learn how to use them in applications and a little bit introduction about all the three interfaces. So let's begin. The ResultSet interface. This particular interface, ResultSet, the name itself is telling you that it is getting you some result from somewhere. Now this somewhere is your database. So ResultSet interface is basically responsible for getting the data from the database and giving it or displaying back to you. Now its main function is to hold the retrieved data from the database. It will also act as an iterator to move through all the retrieved records from your database. So let's take a simple example. You are retrieving your data from a database using the ResultSet interface. Now the whole database is in your ResultSet interface. So it will contain a lot of rows. Now you can move through all of these rows, you can iterate through all of these rows in this particular interface. Okay, now this ResultSet interface has three different kinds of methods. The first method is reading the results. Now this reading the results method is going to help you to read from the database. The second method is navigating method. The navigating methods is going to help you to move through the various records or iterate through the various records or rows that is retrieved. And the third is updating data. Now this updating data method is going to help you to update the data into a database without firing a specific query. So let us see this with the help of a practical program. Now in this practical program, the things that we are going to do is, we are going to first of all select the data or the number of rows from a table. Then we are going to navigate through the various records in the table, and we are going to update the record in the table without firing an updation query. Let's see this practically. We'll begin with the ResultSet demonstration. This program is basically used for reading the results and retrieving the results from the database. So let's begin. First, let us see what my table actually consists of. So this is my database student, this is my table stud, and these are my records which I want to retrieve. So let's begin. I will first import the java.sql.star main method, which will throws exception. I will write the URL of the database, that is JDBC :mysql localhost 3306 and the database name. I will issue my driver com.mysql.jdbc.driver. I will check whether I have my driver is already loaded. Next step is I will write my query. I want to select from the table, so I will do select star from table stud, which is there in the student database. I will create connection kind of reference. Con is equal to driver manager dot get connection, in which I am going to specify the URL database. I am going to specify the username, that is root, and password, which is by default null. Okay, now connection. Okay, connection. Okay, now if con is not equal to null, then database connection is successful. Okay, now I will use my query here using the statement, simple statement interface. So statement stempty is equal to con dot create statement. Create statement is returning statement, therefore you are storing it in stempty. Okay, now we have to execute this select statement. So stempty dot execute. Now here you cannot use the execute update method because you don't want to update, insert or delete into the table. Rather you want to select from the table. So you are going to use the execute query method instead. Okay, so here you can do that, executes the given SQL statement and returns the result set object. Okay, it is going to select from your table. Okay, so when I want to select, it is going to return result set. Okay, so I have to store it into result set. So execute query method, it will take in a string and return result set. So execute query, it will take in my select query, that is select star from student, that goes in here, and it is going to return result set. So result set rs. Now this rs, that is a result set, is by default an iterator. Okay, so it will help you to retrieve from the table. So let us see how. While rs dot next. Okay, now this rs dot next, what this next is doing, next is a method of result set which is going to move on to all the different records in your table. So this iterating thing will be handled by the next method. Okay, so now next I'm going to use the various reading result methods of this interface. So first I will print from the table s out. Let us first print the ID from the table. So plus rs dot get int. Why I am writing int? I am writing int because I want to retrieve integer value from the table. That is why I am writing get int. Now this get int method is taking inside two things. One is an integer number or a string. First let us start with the integer number. This integer number is nothing but the column which you want to use or you want to see. You won't be able to see, so let's just put it here. Okay, get int is taking the column name. Okay, column index here. Okay, so here we are going to write the first column. So the first column is going to return an integer. Let us check this from the table. My first column is ID, and ID, you know, it has integer data type. So I am doing get int from the first column. This is one of the ways of retrieving the first column. Let us just run and see this program. Okay, this is how you can retrieve your ID. Another method of this is retrieving ID is rs dot get int, and inside you are specifying a string. Now what is this string? It is your column label. Okay, so my column label here is ID. What I am writing here inside should be exactly the same as what is written here, this ID. Okay, so you are specifying the label of your column here. Okay, so this is the second method of retrieving your ID. Okay, you can get your IDs in these particular ways. Okay, next we will try to retrieve the string. Okay, so let me just comment this part. We will retrieve the string, that is rs dot get string, that is your name. Okay, so here I am writing this thing, this field name here. Okay, so this name I am retrieving here, and I can just write name here. Okay, my ID and name. And second way is you can directly specify here column number 2. This is also a method through which you can get the name. Okay, so these were the basic methods for retrieving or reading the results from the table. We shall now move on to the various navigator methods. So for moving on to the navigator methods, I will comment the retrieving result code. What I am doing here is I am just executing my select statement, and my whole database is stored into RS. Okay, now when my this statement is executed, stmt.execute query, and the select query is executed, the whole table is stored into RS. At this particular moment, RS is pointing towards the first row or the first record in the table. So I am going to write if RS dot first. Okay, now this first method returns boolean, which is true or false. So if it is pointing to the first record, then I want to print my first record. So I can directly write, I can just directly print the ID. Okay, so if after the query is executed and if my pointer is on the first record, then I am printing only the ID of that record. So let's run this program. Yes, so which means this is returning true, which means that pointer is on the first record. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to move it to the last record. So I will do rs dot last. Okay, so this will move the cursor to the last row in the result set. So now it is moving on to the last record, which had an ID of 11. So now let's print the ID. S out ID plus rs dot get int from ID, or the first column, whichever you want. Okay, so let's run the program and see. You are getting ID 11. Okay, okay, now I want to move to a column which is previous to this result. So let us move on to the previous method, rs dot previous. Okay, now what this previous method is doing, it moves the cursor to the previous row in the result set object. So currently our pointer is on the last row. Now we are moving it to the second last row. So it is going to print the second last result. Let us print ID plus ID plus rs dot get int ID. Okay, let us see what it should display from the table. It should it printed 11 previously. Now from here we are moving on to previous, which is this record. So it is going to print 5 as your result. Let us see. Yes, ID is 5. Okay, so these were the navigating methods. Now we shall move on to the various data updation methods. So let me just comment this code and move on to the data updation method. So when you want to update your data concurrently while selecting your data, your updation methods will be used. I am repeating once again. Whenever you want to select from the table as well as you want to concurrently update into the table, then your update methods will be used. So let us see how you can update. The first change that you have to make here is in your create statement, you are supposed to let it know that you are going to make it updatable. So you are supposed to make it concur updatable. Okay, now this is a variable of the result set interface, and it is returning an integer. So it is returning 1008. Okay. So here we can specify either 1008 or we can specify conquer updatable. This is this is a way of telling that you are going to update the table, and you are also going to say second argument that you are going to pass here is result set dot type scroll sensitive. Okay, so it is going to make it scrollable. Your result set is going to be scrollable if many. Okay, so this is the first change. Second is inside your while statement, when you are retrieving your records, you are going to say that you will first get your data. Okay, so what you are going to do is your rs dot update row method you are going to fire, and before update row rs dot get integer. Okay, you will get the integer array and you are going to add 1 to it. Okay, and this data you are going to do in rs dot update integer method. Okay, so what I am doing here in this method is in rs dot update integer method I am taking the integer from the first column. What I am doing is that column I am first getting the data from that column via rs dot get into 1, that is I am getting the id and I am adding 1 to the id and I am closing it, and then I am updating the row. Let me just remove this. Once again I am explaining. I am making my result scrollable and updatable while selecting. I am firing my SQL query of selection. I am then updating my integer. Okay, I want to update my integer value, means here I am having 5, I want to make it 6. Okay, so this is my target. So I have to first get my 5 from the table and then I have to update my 5 from the table. So now in my update int method, in the first column, I am going to take that column and I am going to add 1 to it. Then I will fire rs dot update row. Okay, and then I can directly print the row. id plus rs dot getInt from id or from the first column. Okay, let us run the result, run the program and see. Okay, it has no primary keys, so you need to compulsory make this a primary key. Okay, so if I have to make this a primary key, I have to alter the structure of the table. How can I alter it? I can alter it from here. I can make this primary key. Do you really want to execute and add a primary key? Yes. Okay. Okay, now it is saying it has a duplicate entry, so it won't be able to make it a primary key. So what we can do is we can remove certain records from here. SQL delete from stud where id is equal to 5. Okay, now I can just fire this query. Okay, so 5 rows were affected. Now you can browse the table. Okay, I have only 11 and ABC. Now I will be able to alter the structure. I will be able to make it a primary key. Yes. Okay, now it is a primary key. You can see here it's a primary key. Okay, now I can run this program. And I am taking here 11 and I am adding 1 to 11, which is going to make it 12. So let us run and see. Okay, ID is 12. You can see the changes reflecting in the table. The ID is now 12. Okay, so my table is being updated. So this is how you can update your record. An extra tip for today is that you can also use the simple execute method to select data from a table, but this execute method returns only boolean, so you won't be able to print the records from the table. So if at all you want to print your data from the table, you compulsory need to use the execute query method. But if you just want to fire the select query without retrieving the results, you can use the only execute method. But execute update method won't be helpful to you here. The next is the ResultSetMetaData interface. The ResultSetMetaData interface is, the name itself is telling you that it gives you more data regarding the result set. So let us see how it is going to give you the results. So in this particular ResultSetMetaData interface, we are going to get the details or the types or the properties of all the result set data retrieved from the table. In other words, we can say that whatever data is retrieved from the table in the result set, we are going to get more information or more details regarding that data. Now this information can be the total number of columns retrieved from the table, the name of the table, the data type of the columns, the name of the columns, the label, display label of the columns. So all these things you can get through the ResultSetMetaData interface. Database metadata. Now database metadata interface, the name itself is telling you that it gives you more information about the database that you are using or which is in picture. So it gives you the details regarding the database level metadata, which means whatever details regarding the database, like its URL, like its user, its driver. Okay, then you can also know about the username of the database. You can know more about the columns of the database. You can know more about the tables which are there in that particular database, and certain features like it supports stored procedures, it makes use of function, does it help you to do batch updates. So all these are database features. So all these things, all these details regarding the database we can get with the help of the database metadata interface. So let's implement the result set metadata and database metadata interface via a program. In this particular program, we are going to get the details of the retrieved records and the details of the database. So let's see this programmatically. We are going to program the result set metadata interface and database metadata interface. Now, the result set metadata interface is going to tell you more about the results. Now, let us see how it is going to tell you more about the results. First is, we will first write the string SQL statement in which we are going to write the select query, select star from the stud table which is in the student database. Now we are going to write or make a connection object, connection. Okay, connection is there. We are going to make a statement object stmt. stmt is equal to con.create statement. After creating this statement, we are going to execute the statement, execute query, inside which I am giving my select statement, and it is going to return the result set rs. Okay, this was what you were familiar with. Okay, select star from stud. Okay, it is already specified. This string is already specified. Let me just keep it as it is and let me just comment this string. Okay, execute query. Okay, now next, after executing this query, the whole result set will be in rs. Next thing that we want to do is we want to use the result set metadata interface. Let us name it rsmd. Okay, now this result set metadata is upon your result set. So rs dot get metadata. This method rsmd, this method is result set dot get metadata method is going to return result set metadata. Okay, and it is always called upon the result set. So in another way you can say that result set has a method get metadata, which is going to give the number, the type and properties of the result set. Okay, so let us see what it has to give you. Let us just print rsmd.get table name. Okay, now this get table name is taking the column number. The first column in our table is ID and second is name, as you can see, ID and name. So it is going to give the table name for column number 1 and table name for column number 2. If you specify any other integer apart from 1 and 2, it is going to give you an error. Let us see. Get table name 0 is going to return an error. Okay, so it is saying that index is out of range. Let us name 1, which is ID. So it is returning that ID is a column of stud table. Similarly for 2, that is name, it is returning stud. But for 3, again an error, because index is out of range. So it is going to give you the name of the table. Apart from name of the table, it can also give you the name of the class. rsmd.get class. Now this get class method is going to give you the class upon which this method is called. So it is called upon rsmd. So it is going to give me, oh, this is out of range. Let me just make it 2. Okay, it is result set metadata. So this object is an object of result set metadata. So get class. Next is we can get the total column count. So rsmd.get column count. Okay, it is returning an integer. You can see that. Okay, just a minute. It is returning, and get column count is returning integer. Okay, it is returning an integer. So let us run this and see. There are a total of 2 columns. You can also get the column name. Get column name, the first column, it will return ID. Okay, and if I do 2, it is going to return name. Right? Okay, next we are going to do column class. Get column class name. It is going to give the class of your column, which is whether it is integer, whether it is a string. Okay, so get column class name. So let us write the first column, which is your ID. ID is of integer data type. Okay, right? Okay, next is we can also get rsmd dot get column label. Now this column label is different from column name, because label is something which is always there in your display, but class name or column name is something which is actually your name. You can change display names, you can change display labels using this method. So get column label of the second column, that is name. So it is going to return name, because in display I want the name only. Okay, so this is name. You can also get column type name. Get column type name. Now this type name is the is a string which is returning your column's type name. Let us run and see. It is varchar. Okay, and same without name, I just want the type. So rsmd dot get column type, only type. This is returning an integer. Let me take it above. This is returning an integer. Now this integer means it is going to give you a number. Okay, it is going to return 12. Get column type. Okay, type of the second column. Now the basic difference between this method and this method is this is returning a string where you are getting your output as varchar, but varchar is represented in an integer format by a particular number. So varchar will be returned by 12 here. Let us just check and see. Yes, varchar is 12. Okay, so when you say type, it is going to return a number, but when you say type name, it is going to return the name of the data type. So this is all about your result set metadata. Now we shall move on to database metadata. For database metadata, you can get data regarding the table. So let us see which are the various database metadatas that you can check. So first we will create an object of database metadata DBMD, and this method is always called by the connection interface. Okay, so whenever you want to access result set metadata, it is called upon the result set, and wherever you want to find out database metadata, you have to fire it upon the connection interface. Okay, so the get metadata method is for result set as well as for connection, but their uses are different. You can see it returns database metadata. Okay, right. Now using DBMD, we are going to access various things. So first DBMD dot, we will first access the various database related data. So we will first check get database product name. Okay, so the name of our product, that is MySQL database. Okay, let me just differentiate both of these so that you are not confused. Okay, MySQL. Next is we can find out the name or the version of the product that you are using. Dot get product version. Okay, it is also returning a string. It will give me the version of my MySQL, that is this version. Okay, next is we will find out the various URL that are possible for this database. Get URL, that is the URL of my database. That is this, we have already incorporated in our program. Okay, next we will find out the username kind of data for my system, my database. Get username, okay, which is root, localhost root. Okay, next is we can find out the driver that I'm using here. Okay, so plus dbmd dot get driver name, which is this. I can also get the version of my driver. Get driver version, this will return the version of my driver. Okay, this is the connector file which I told you, we are adding it here. Okay, it is my that file. Next we can get supports various database features, like does it support batch update? I have already shown you add batch method. Yes, so this add batch method is supported or not? Can it support batch updates or not? So for that you have supports batch updates. Does it support? it will return true or false. You can see this method is returning true or false. It's boolean. Okay, so it is returning true. So you can batch update as we have already done previously. Okay, you can also see whether it supports a stored procedure or not. Supports stored procedure or not. Yeah. Yes. And lastly, let us check whether it has save points, because save point is something which is very useful when you are doing transactions. Supports save points. It is a checkpoint. If there is some error, you can restore via save points.